Good evening, friends. In this lockdown period, we have a series of webinar going on. Tomorrow we are starting entire series on GST for 6 days. So would like to request if you or anybody else like to join, kindly join that. Again, we are improving of skill. We are launching learning the speed reading program basically. Master the learn or fast the learn the process. So for that we are launching again one series in the evening tomorrow. So kindly join that. It will give you a more and more advantage in terms of your professional life once we start reworking after the lockdown. Today we have a special session on cross charging by Mitesh Joshi. He is very experienced chartered accountant on GST matters, specialized from SS Gupta. Is a product of SS Gupta basically. He has 4+ years of more experience in the firm. Recently started his own practice. We all should luck him all the best. And with this, I would like to give charge of the session to Mitesh Bhai. Mitesh Bhai, please start your session for next 1.5 hour or 2 hour.
Thank you, Virag Bhai. Am I audible, sir?
Yes, you are audible also and visible. Please continue, Mitesh Bhai.
Yes, sir. Hello, everyone. I hope everyone is safe and doing good in this tough time. Before we start today's session, I would like to thank each one of you who have joined us today for this topic session GST crash course on ISD and cross charge. Special thanks to Virag Bhai for providing me this platform to share my knowledge and views. With this, I will start today's session. Firstly, we'll just run through the topic that we shall cover today. Our first topic is cross charge versus ISD, which is actually the main topic for today's session. The valuation under cross charge. Everyone is facing difficulty in the valuation aspect of cross charge. Annual return for financial year 18-19. And then we'll be covering analysis on interest payable under GST. A lot of notices have been received recently. I will be covering this aspect especially for that case. And thereafter, there are few common issues which are faced across the industry and the CA fraternity. With this, I will start with my first topic, cross charge. Now, what is cross charge, friends? There's no term as cross charge in the whole of GST Act or rules. It is a term used by the GST experts. Yes, sir, there's no definition of cross charge in GST. Now, what is the cross charge? Why has it been termed cross charge? What is the background of it? For that, I would dwell on the scope of supply under Section 7 of CGST Act, which includes sale, transfer, barter, exchange, rental, lease, or disposal made for a consideration. The important aspect is all these activities for a consideration would tend down to supply. However, there are certain exceptions. Now, what are those exceptions? Those activities have been specified under Schedule 1 of CGST Act. There are 4 entries. We'll be covering one entry, which is our today's topic with regard to cross charge. This activities or these 4 transactions would be considered as a supply even if it is without consideration. So if you give any goods free of cost to a needy person, whether GST would be leviable or not would be decide if it fits into any of the 4 entries in Schedule 1. So the main entry, entry 2, what is it? It says supply of goods or services between distinct persons, even if without consideration, shall be considered as a supply. It also covers related persons, but I would like to invest my time only with regard to distinct persons. Now, what is distinct persons? For that, we'll run through section 25, subsection 4 of CGST Act. A person who has more than one GST in a single state or more than one GST in multiple states shall be considered as distinct persons in respect of each such registration. Now, distinct person means it is a deeming fiction that each GST would be a separate person for the purpose of GST Act. Only for the purpose of GST Act, friends. So for GST, each GST would be a separate person, a distinct person. We will be using this terminology, distinct person. So the supply of service by one state, say state A, to state B, there is supply of services from one state to state B is known as cross charge. This supply of service between two distinct persons is known as cross charge. Now, what is new? Cross charge. Was it there in the earlier regime, the pre-GST regime, or is it totally a new concept in the GST era? Friends, a part of it was already there in the pre-GST era. In VAT regime, every state was separately registered under State VAT Act. So supply of goods by one state to another state, even though they belong to a single PAN, would be termed as supply, would be termed as sale. In case of excise, duty was on removal of goods. So removal of goods from one factory to another factory or depot, excise duty was leviable on that as well. So what is new in GST? In case of service tax, there was a concept of centralized registration. All the major companies who had presence in multiple states were registered centrally under service tax. However, they could have opted for a separate service tax number for each branch or each offices. There was a provision. But whether they would be considered as a separate person for levying service tax, no, friends, there have been a lot of judgments, a number of judgments, which has already cleared the doubt of many people that in service tax era, even though a service has been given by one service tax number to another service tax, a branch to branch, it won't be considered as a supply of service or a provision of service in the earlier regime, as it was removing goods from one pocket or service from one pocket to another pocket. So service tax, there was PAN-based registration, you can say that. So what is new in GST is they have created a deeming fiction that each GST would be considered as a distinct person. This is the difference between the old regime and the new regime. Now, why distinct person? Why this deeming fiction? Isn't GST a simple tax, a single tax, one tax, one nation? Have you heard of this? Actually, it is not. It's not a single tax. It has been divided into two parts, a central tax and state tax. Central kitty and state kitty. Now, state governments have their own act, SGST Act. Each state government has a separate act. So you can consider that each SGST Act is a separate government or governing body. Similarly, central CGST, central government, the tax collected by central government is CGST. Now, these two are different. What about IGST? IGST is nothing but a portion of CGST and the SGST. So IGST is collected, but ultimately it is divided and distributed to central government revenue or central government's kitty and state government's kitty. So actually it's not a single tax, it is multiple tax. And therefore, to avoid the situation wherein one state would get advantage at the cost of another state, to avoid this, a deeming fiction has been created. to settle the disputes or to not let that movement come in a central act. With this, I will move on to the second concept, ISD, Input Service Distributor. Now, what is an ISD? It is not a new concept, friends. It was already there in the service tax regime. Those who are practicing in service tax would be very well aware of this concept. Now, this was applicable in case there were more than one registration. There can be cases where I was providing service as well as I was manufacturing goods. So I was separately registered under excise and service tax. So ISD was emerged as a concept. Now, what is ISD? ISD is a mechanism to distribute the ITC on what? On input services received from a third party. Received from a third party to all those distinct persons who have received the services. I would once again reiterate, ISD is nothing but a mechanism to distribute the ITC between distinct persons on availment of a single service from a third party. So with this ISD and cross charge, now the main topic, what is the difference between cross charge and ISD? I don't know why everyone gets confused between cross charge and ISD. They're totally different concepts. They're totally different. Now I will move ahead with the distinguish or comparison fact. How is it differing or how to not get confused in future? First is ISD is in case of input services. A service is received by the company which is to be distributed to each distinct person. So it's with regard to an input service that is received by the company. And what is cross charge? Cross charge is not with regard to the input services. It is a supply of service by one distinct person to another distinct person, by one GST to another GST. It's an outward supply. Friends, it's an outward supply. It's not an input service. So ISD is with regard to the input service distribution and cross charge is with regard to outward supply. Now, if those two are different, one is with regard to the purchases and another is with regard to sales, why do people get confused? What is it that confuses them? I would like to take an example of ISD. What is a classic example of ISD first before going into that? A statutory auditor under the Companies Act or Income Tax Act audits the whole company, accounts of the whole company. It doesn't vouch the books of a single GST or two GSTs. It vouches the accuracy, authenticity, or audits the books of accounts for the company as a whole. So an auditor is providing services to the company as a whole. But auditor is providing a single service. He is not going to raise invoice on each and every distinct person for GST purpose. So he raises an invoice, a single invoices on ISD, which in turn distributes as under GST, the service has been received by all such distinct persons. So therefore the service, the invoice raised by auditor is routed through ISD mechanism. So the credit on audit fees is distributed through ISD so that, what is the logic behind it? So that a single state does not get benefit. If a single state, say Maharashtra for example, which is the head office in our case. So Maharashtra, if the invoice is raised only in Maharashtra and Maharashtra avails the credit and utilizes it to discharge the output tax of Maharashtra. Now it would result in a loss for Maharashtra state because the revenue would be less because they would be utilizing the credit. So therefore, they have said that this service, department can come and ask, why have you not distributed? This service is not totally for Maharashtra state. This is received by all distinct persons. So for that, we have to distribute the service. Now, how do we distribute? Is there any methodology prescribed? Yes. it is to be distributed based on the turnover of each such distinct person. But which turnover in the preceding financial year? Turnover of preceding financial year. So what in case if a distinct person was not present in the last year? Say for example 17-18, there were only 10 states registered. In 18-19, there is an addition and 11 state has emerged. So auditor has raised an invoice for 18-19. Statutory audit of 18-19 is over and an invoice has been raised. So now that has to be distributed to these 11 GSTs, because audit has been received by the 11 state as well. But if we take the turnover of the preceding financial year in this case, then 11 GST was not in existence. So for such scenarios, they have prescribed that instead of preceding financial year, you can go for preceding quarter when the turnover was available for that 11 state as well. So preceding financial year or preceding quarter would depend whether there is a new GST or not during the year. Now we'll proceed further. I gave you the example of statutory auditor. Similarly, advertisement services. This is also a classic example of ISD. Advertisement through TV is published all over the India. So a service is received of publicity and marketing or advertisement by each such distinct person, and therefore it can be routed through ISD, a single service provider. Now we'll compare what is ISD and cross charge. Just a sec, friends. So what is the main concept? First is the meaning, what we have discussed. So ISD is a mechanism through which service available by the company from a third party is distributed to all the recipients of service who has received the service. Now one thing I would like to make it clear. Now people confuse generally that every service which is routed through ISD has to be distributed to all the recipients. That can be the case. However, it would depend on service to service. Now there can be a case that a service has been received by only 5 distinct persons out of 10. So in that case, ISD is supposed to distribute credit in the ratio of turnover of that 5 distinct persons, not to all GSTs. There can be a case with regard to 2 distinct persons as well, a service received by only 2 states or by North GSTs registered in the North division. It can be anything. So you have to analyze from that aspect. Merely something which is common will not be routed through ISD and will not be distributed to all distinct persons. You have to analyze whether the benefit of that has been received by each distinct person, or rather I would say that service has been received by that distinct person or not. That will be the deciding factor. Now cross charge I have already told, it is a supply of service by one distinct person to another distinct person. In case of ISD, the service is received by a third person, received from a third person. In case of cross charge, one GST is providing service to another GST. Moving further, what is the logic behind ISD? I already said that the benefit should not be taken by one state. That would result in loss to that state. So for that, the logic is that each state government should get the benefit basically, and there should not be loss to any single state government. So therefore, it is routed to ISD and distributed to everyone. Now, in case of cross charge, one GST provides service, I already told you. So what is the logic? That many times it happens that all the services majorly are received at head offices. All the person raises the invoice on head offices. Now there can be a case, simple case, that a company is registered in 3 states. 2 states are manufacturing states. They produce and sell. Third state there's only a branch office, a sale office. So there's no turnover for that branch. So now what? The cost incurred at that branch. Now, if he's not providing any service, why is he incurring cost? So can I say that branch is ultimately promoting the products of state A, state B? And therefore they are promoting the product and providing and thus providing services to state A and state B. Yes, this is what supply of service is. In such cases, there would be a cross charge. So in case of ISD, there is neither a supply of goods nor services. ISD is just a mechanism to distribute. It doesn't supply goods or services. If that was the case, there would have been a credit ledger as well. ISD never avails the credit. You might have seen in normal GST, there's credit ledger, there's cash ledger. In case of ISD, there's no credit ledger. There's no 3B, 2B file. Because it doesn't avail, it actually takes the credit and distributes it. So it doesn't provide any service or doesn't supply any goods. Now another important differentiation is ISD can distribute ITC only on input services. Friends, take note of that. Many people get confused. They even transfer the credit of capital goods through ISD route. ISD is only for input services. Now, what in case of a capital good which is common for the company as a whole? I would come to that later. Now, in case of cross charge, now this is the most distinguishing factor. Now, cross charge we have understood it's for supply of service, and ISD is to distribute. Now, cross charge, if it is for supply of services, they would also avail, the head office we say would also avail some input services to provide output services to different distinct persons. Now people get confused between this service. Now there's a difference between a service received from a third party, which is for the benefit of the company as a whole, and a service received by head office. A simple example I'll say is a renting of premises. Now head office is located in Maharashtra. Now the premises is taken on rent. The owner raises invoice on the company monthly along with GST. Now whether that has to be taken through ISD route? No friends, because the landlord, the owner is not providing renting services to all the distinct persons. It is not bothered with the other distinct persons. It is only concerned with the Maharashtra GST. It is providing service to only Maharashtra GST. So therefore that has to be availed in Maharashtra. So people get confused because they think this is a common service for the company as a whole, but this is not. An auditor provides services to the company. A landlord owner provides renting service to only the head office, to only Maharashtra GST. I would take similar examples in our later part of the session. I would further delegate some time on this. With this, we'll move forward. Now, as I already told you, ISD credit can be distributed to ISD to all the recipients, to two recipients, even a single recipient. What if I have given wrongly ISD number instead of my Maharashtra normal GST number? Now, in such cases, ISD will take the credit, but kindly take precaution that while distributing, it should be distributed only to Maharashtra. Cross charge, generally all the GSTs are recipients because head office. What is head office now? I'll just discuss and give 1 minute on head office. Now head office, we generally consider the premise where the employees, the persons working, are not working for a single GST or for the benefit of single GST. It consists of the tax team, the central tax team, the accounts team, which does the accounting of all GSTs. The HR team, which recruits for all the locations. A factory manager can be recruited by the HR sitting in the head office for Surat factory. So a central team basically who's sitting at office, we consider that as head office. But there can be a case where such central teams are not sitting at head office. They can be located anywhere. But that state will have to cross charge for the services because the persons working in that department are providing service to all states. I would further take this topic in my later part. I would devote some time. I would go slow on that part. Moving further, now ISD has to be distributed based on the turnover of preceding financial year or preceding quarter as explained to you earlier. Now, what in case of cross charge? Is there any methodology prescribed? No, friends, no. There's nothing mentioned in the act or the rules. Everyone can cross charge at the reasonable method taken by them, which can differ company to company. But the ideal scenario would be to distribute based on the turnover. Now, turnover of the preceding year, turnover of the current tax period. Now, this is the difference distinguishing point. Kindly note, this is important. Huh? In case of ISD, we take preceding financial year's turnover or preceding quarter. In case of cross charge, we take the turnover. There's no methodology prescribed. I'm again telling that. However, this is a general practice. We take the turnover of all distinct persons for that current tax period. So, for example, in case of April, there's a supply of service by Maharashtra, that is head office, to all other states. So, in that case, Maharashtra will value the cost of cross charge and thereafter raise the invoice to each one of the GSTs. Now, that will be done based on the turnover of each such GST. Suppose, for example, I will take there are 10 GSTs. One is head office. Now, head office is located in Maharashtra. Maharashtra provides services as well. So, there's head office as well as a normal service provider in single state. Though GST is a single. So, whatever head office consumes, the cost for the cross charge, he will have to cross charge to all the 10 states, even to Maharashtra. So suppose, say for example, 10 lakh is the value. So it will distribute to 10 states, assuming the turnover of each such state is equal. Say 1 lakh for example, then it would be distributed to all the GSTs in the same ratio. So 1 lakh would be distributed to each such state. So it would be based on the turnover of the April in this case. Now we'll go forward. What is the return to be filed in case of ISD? GSTR 6 is a prescribed separate return for ISD. And in case of cross charge, as it is a normal supply of service by one distinct person to another distinct person, it is to be covered under normal scenario in 3B and GSTR 1. Now, examples I have already given you: statutory audit, consultant fees. There can be a GST consultant who is providing retailership services to the company as a whole. That can also be routed through ISD. A software purchased for the accounting software, you can say. TV advertisements. Now, there's no example for cross charge. Cross charge is an outward supply. It's a service, admin service, or a business support service, we can say, given by HO to all such distinct persons. Now, what is the main crux of this cross charge? Now, people understand cross charge very well. However, they cannot implement it in their company because of the main factor that they cannot value it properly. There is no method prescribed for valuation for cross charge. So how do we go? So I would give some examples as well. to so that you all understand it in a clear way. Now, going further, what is the valuation rule? Has the rule prescribed any specific provision? So we say Rule 28 has been provided in case of supply of goods or services between distinct persons. Now there are four methods prescribed. One is open market value. So you can transfer or cross charge based on open market value. Now what is open market value? Open market value is generally the selling price in today's world at the current point of time. You can say that. But does the company provides the admin services, the business support services to any other person? Open market value is, you can say, if the person, the supplier and the recipient are not related, the price at which those goods or services are supplied to that unrelated person can be considered as open market value. Now there is no open market value because the company does not provide support services to any other person. It provides only services to distinct persons, that is related persons. So we cannot opt for open market value. Similar is like, kind and quality. I don't need any discussion on this. Thereafter we can move ahead. The best method, what I would advise, or generally what everyone follows, I would say, is cost plus 10. 110% of the cost of provision of service. So how do we determine the value? 110% of cost of provision of service. Now, what is the cost of provision of service? I would cover it after this. So first we have to decide what is the methodology. Thereafter we can derive what is the cost. So rule 30 cost plus 10, and not necessary you follow cost plus 10. If you don't want to follow 30, you can go for 31 as well. What is 31? You can take any reasonable means consistent with the valuation provisions. Now this is important. Any reasonable does not mean any figures. It has to be reasonable. So one can say, why cost plus 10? I would go as for cost plus 5 or cost plus 2%. You can very well do so. There's no problem. One can say ki my profit percentage is only, net profit is only 5% on the transaction, or the GP is only 5%. I'm selling to unrelated persons at 5% of margin. Why would I cross charge at cost plus 10 to my related persons or distinct persons? You can take cost plus 5 in such cases, sir. It is very reasonable. Now, there has to be some logic or reasonableness behind applying some deviation from the prescribed methods. Similarly, you can take any other basis which is justifiable and follow the single method for all GSTs, for all the recipient of service, all the distinct persons. You cannot go like cost plus 10 for one state, cost plus 5 for another state, at cost for third state. Follow it consistently across all GSTs. Otherwise, it is going to create a problem. It is going to be litigated. They will say that you are on purpose, so that there's no on purpose distributing at different prices, so that there's no accumulation at the recipient state. You are using it at your benefit and supplying it any value. This way, a credit from one state can be transferred to another state. Say, for example, Maharashtra has too much accumulation of credit. So Maharashtra raises invoice on Gujarat and Karnataka. So Maharashtra can charge 110 based on cost plus 10 if the cost is 100. But he purposely charges 200 because he has accumulated credit. So there is no going to be cash outflow for Maharashtra. So he on purposes charges GST on 200. So can he do so? So there has to be consistency. So department can allege you have on purpose at your whims and fancies change the method every now and then. So kindly take note of this. This is very important. Everyone has to follow cost plus 10 or some reasonable method. With this, I'll move ahead on the main topic, valuation for cross charge. Now, what is it that we are going to learn in this? The first thing, What is the method? We have already decided cost plus 10 right now. So what is the cost of provision of service? For this, I would explain you this valuation for cross charge. There are four aspects. Valuation for cross charge would include four aspects, four things. First, is cost would include the following: input services consumed by head offices. Now, what are the input services consumed by the head offices? Now, this is a point where people get confused. I already gave you the example of renting. Now, suppose we say canteen services is provided at head office for the employees of the head office. Canteen service is already there. So now that would be routed through ISD because HO is working for the company as a whole. No, canteen service, the vendor is providing service to the employees of the head office. Therefore, that credit has to be availed. It is blocked, I know, but for simplicity, that credit could have been availed only in Maharashtra. Similarly, security services providing the guards at the entrance of the gate of the head office. They are providing services to the Maharashtra GST in the head office. So that all this kind of services you'll have to analyze. What are those services that are consumed at the head offices? The distinguishing point is consumed. If a service is consumed at head offices, it is as good as an input service received by head office to provide an output service, to provide business support service to distinct persons. So you will have to distinguish between this. When is ISD number to be given and when is the Maharashtra GST or the head office GST has to be given. So if a service is getting consumed at head office, you have to provide Maharashtra GST's number. If a service is for the company as a whole, say statutory audit, television advertisement, consultant, then that has to be routed through ISD because he is not providing service only to Maharashtra. Maharashtra or head office cannot take the benefit of that. With this, I'll go ahead. Now, after input service, what is the major cost? Now, inputs like stationery, all other physical items, goods, cup, saucer, food items, tea, coffee, everything, all those inputs are also to be covered for the valuation for cross charge. Now, which only those consumed at head offices, only those stationery or inputs that are consumed at head office. Going ahead, now there's capital goods. Now we have covered input services, inputs, now capital goods. Now capital goods, it is not charged to P&L or it is not transferred to P&L, I can say that. It is capitalized. So how do we add the cost of that? Now depreciation comes into picture. Depreciation is the cost, the wear and tear of that asset, which is used by the head office. So what are the capital goods that are used by head office? First of all, computers, you can say the accounting team uses laptops, computers, printers, the centralized AC. There can be many such things. The tea vending machine, the coffee vending machine, all such are capitalized and used at head offices. So the depreciation on all such capital goods would form part of my cost of valuation for cross charging. Now with this, the fourth and the most important why is it most important? Because this is going to be the major chunk of the cost. Neither input services nor inputs nor capital goods. The salary cost is going to be a big chunk. The major cost for cross charge would be salary. Now salary of whom? Salary of employees working in head offices. Now don't confuse them with all the employees. Or those working in central teams, you can say. The HR team, admin team, accounts payable team, all those who are doing accounting of each and every GST and each and every distinct person sitting at HO. So all the salaries of those persons. Now salary would include not only the salary as in basic salary, it would also include the gratuity, the bonus, any allowance, any perquisite, whatever is there, all has to be included. Now, these are the four parameters which derives the valuation for cross charge. What is the cost of valuation for cross charge? It consists of input services, inputs, capital goods which are consumed in head offices, and the salary of employees who are working in head offices and or working in central teams. Okay, so this would result, the summation of all this would lead to the cost. Now we'll have to add 10% as already discussed in the valuation rules. Say for example, the cost for running the HO for the month of April was 10 lakh. Now we'll add up a margin, 10%, a markup, cost plus 10. So 11 lakh has to be distributed to all the distinct persons, to all the 10 distinct persons. Now 10 Maharashtra head offices in Maharashtra, and there's no separate GST. So how come it distribute to himself? So in such cases, for calculation, you will have to distribute to 10. However, you have to raise invoice only on 9 distinct persons. Friends, kindly get that thing clear in your head. You, for the purpose of calculating how much is to be charged to one state or one distinct person, you'll have to even consider the Maharashtra GST where head office is located, because Maharashtra is also providing services. If head office is located and there's no services provided from Maharashtra, then you can say that head office is providing services to only 9 GSTs and 9 invoices have to be raised. Now in this case, the service by HO is provided to 10 GSTs including Maharashtra itself. So for calculation, you have to consider 10 GSTs. But for raising invoice, Maharashtra or head office cannot raise invoice in Maharashtra because the GST is same. So therefore, 9 invoices has to be raised in such cases. I hope I'm quite clear on this aspect, because this is the major or the most confusing part. Everyone knows what is cross charge ISD, but people cannot implement it because they cannot do the valuation, how to derive the cost. They are finding it very difficult or impossible for few companies. So this is what the aspect is. It's as simple as that. There's a difference between ISD and cross charge. There's no need to get confused. Only confusing is to derive the value of the cross charge. Now, that is a confusing part, I know that, but that is little difficult. For this, I have simplified it. I will show you the steps what you need to follow to derive the cost, so that it becomes simple for you to implement it going ahead. I know many companies have not cross charged, or in fact they ask, is cross charge mandatory? If we are already going for ISD, ISD also distributes to all distinct person. And cross charge, is it mandatory? Now I've already made you understand the concept. Now you only decide whether it's mandatory, whether ISD is different or the cross charge is different or not. And both things are different and both have to be followed compulsorily where there's more than one GST. Kindly note, you cannot confuse cross charge and ISD. You cannot say कि ISD कर रहा हूँ तो cross charge जान दो. It's okay. The answer will be same. No, the answer would be different. ISD has a methodology of taking preceding year's turnover. Cross charge, we are saying you need to go as per the current month's turnover or current tax period's turnover. So the value or the input service for the recipient or the distinct person would differ in case of you go through the ISD route and in case you go through the cross charge route. Kindly note that this is very important. I'm repeating this again and again. Now there can be a scenario that head office is located in a common premises. There's a 2-story building. First floor is for head office and second floor is office from where I'm providing the service. Now rent is charged, a single invoice is raised for the two floors. Now in that case, you'll have to proportionately allocate the cost. The renting, say for example, it's 1 lakh. So first floor and second floor, assuming in my example, the floor area is same. The floor area can be a base to decide the cost, to decide the allocation in this case. Assuming it is same, the first floor and second floor, the area space is same. Then we can divide it by 2 and 50,000 is for head office, 50,000 is for Maharashtra GST for provision of service. Kindly take note of this. In many cases, head office is in the same premises from where service is being provided. With this, I will go ahead. Now, example of cross charge I already told you. Head office, now cost of running HO in the given case is 300. I have added 10% margin, so value for cross charge is 330. I'm distributing, assuming in this example, the turnover of A, B, and C is same. Therefore, I have distributed 110, 110, 110 based on the current month's turnover, which is same. Kindly note that. Now, I would like to simplify this cross charge working for you all. I have tried my best to simplify it. I hope it is useful for you all. Now, first and foremost thing, what is to be done? Create a separate cost center for head office. Many companies already have that. If you all have that, you need to evaluate whether the accounting is being done properly into that or not. You need to do an internal audit of that. So a separate cost center for head office. Otherwise, it is not going to be easy. In GST, everyone has already completed GST audit for 17-18. The first and foremost requirement by auditor was state-wise trial balance for each GST or GST-wise trial balance for the company. So if you have GST-wise, take HO as a separate cost center. The trial balance for HO should be separate. Only then it would be easy for you to derive the value for cross charge. Now, second, map the most important cost is the salary cost. The salary cost, we have already seen the 4 aspects. The salary cost is the crux. So map each employee to a branch or to a GST. Now, how do we do that? Basically, a factory manager for Surat would be mapped to Surat or Gujarat GST, we can say that. Similarly, a sales manager located in Karnataka, promoting sales or procuring orders only for Karnataka, that employee has to map to Karnataka. So we'll have to evaluate which employee is working for a specific state or branch and which employees are working for the company as a whole. Accounting person, he does the accounting entry for Maharashtra, for Gujarat, data entry for every state. So he is working for the company as a whole, you can say that. So that map this employee to head office. Now that's very important to understand the difference. Because if this goes wrong, the whole funda of cross charge will go wrong. The valuation will go wrong. So employees can be similarly directors. Directors might be they sit at head office or they sit at some other place, but the salary or the director has to be mapped to HO, head office. Similarly, the department heads, the CFO, the CEO, everyone has to be mapped to head offices. The cost, the salary of the tax heads and all key manager persons has to be mapped to head offices. With this, I would go ahead. Third is now employees, the salary cost is included. Now employees keep on incurring expenses for the benefit of the company to procure more business, to promote. Now all those expenses incurred by those employees who are either sitting at head office or who are sitting somewhere else but are mapped to head offices. All the expenses incurred by them, be it travel, be it food expense, restaurant, promotion, anything, all have to be mapped to head offices. Only then will we get the true cost of running the head office. And next is evaluate each vendor and nature of service. Oh, Nitesh, this is very difficult. How would I do that? I have 10,000 vendors. How can I do that? It's not a small company, Nitesh. Okay, I have understood that. So let's cancel this. Don't evaluate each vendor. That is going to be tedious task. There's another way. You can actually find the cost to run the head office. Now, this is also a task, but it is not as tedious as evaluating each vendor. But this has to be done. Now, no one can know, the accounts department cannot know who are the vendors providing services to HO. So for that, a team meeting or all departments has to be brought into the picture, and all department help should be taken to derive this cost. So the renting, the security, the canteen, the electricity, the repair and maintenance, the Xerox machine wala service, all those services, the maintenance, the regular services, there are a hell lot of services. If those are consumed at head offices, you'll have to evaluate one time exercise. This is one time exercise. Kindly note, this is not to be done every month, because once you are knowing which vendor is providing service to HO, then you can map that vendor to HO, or if that vendor is providing services to HO as well as to other states as well, then you will have to further drill and map the invoice raised on the Maharashtra state or head office. You have to create some way out. So all the cost expenses incurred to run the head offices has to be derived, has to be drilled down and taken care of. Without that, the valuation cannot be done. Now, further capital goods, I have already informed you. Capital goods includes the laptops, computers used by the central teams. Now, there can be case that server, it is kept in head office. It is a central procurement. It is for the company as a whole. Now, all persons, all employees are using to retrieve the data from the servers or take backup and restore backups. All those are done to a server, to a common server, which is located in HO. Now, what is to be done in this case? We cannot take this through ISD route. It is a capital good. Only input services can be distributed through ISD. Since this restriction, we'll have to add this also to head office cost, and this in turn would be cross-charged to all the distinct persons, because head office is providing data management service or a data storage service in the server to all distinct persons. Every distinct person's data is stored in the server. So therefore, that also has to be added. Capital goods used at head office or capital goods used by all the states. Kindly note, there's a difference between this. I'm emphasizing on this. So this is a simple step. First, I would just run through this cost center for head office, map each employee to a branch or GST. Expenses incurred by those employees who are mapped to head offices are to be added to the cost. The other cost or other expenses required or incurred to run the head offices, and the capital goods used by those employees or by the company as a whole, everything has to be added for the valuation of cross charge. I hope I am clear. With this, we have finished ISD and cross charge, but there are certain doubts under cross charge and ISD. We are running short of time. I'll have to rush through these topics. So what are the common doubts under cross charge and ISD? Whether any value can be adopted for cross charging in case all the distinct persons or the recipient units are eligible for full ITC, full input tax credit. Now, proviso to rule 28, which we discussed earlier, has a proviso that any value in the invoice shall be considered as open market value in case the recipient is eligible for 100% ITC. So you can go for that. There is no issue with that. But it is advisable to go for cost plus 10. I am telling you with my personal experience. I have finished audit for 17-18, and we have traced few transactions, peculiar transactions, which the heads were also not aware. For example, I'll take sale of duty credit scripts, the scripts. 17, 18, there were 3 rates. Initially, it was taxable at 18, thereafter 12, and thereafter it was at 0% exempted. Now I've sold those clips. That was an exempt supply. So we don't know few transactions. So it is always better to go for cost plus 10, unless and until you are 100% sure, and don't take any value. I believe one of the methods as prescribed in the valuation rule has to be taken. Not any value, not 1 rupee, 10 rupee. Either open market value, like kind and quality value, cost plus 10, or any reasonable method. Now, second query or doubt, whether only those expenses on which GST has been charged shall be considered for cross charge? No. We have already taken the example of salary, depreciation. Those are also peculiar examples. I will be running little quick and short of time. Now, the first and foremost question. Now, suppose everyone is now aware of cross charge who has attended this and we want to implement it, but they have the prima facie question. Okay, I will do that. But what about the earlier years, the preceding years? I have not done cross charge in earlier years. So if I do this, won't it invite department or won't it invite department attention that you have already done cross charge in 1920 or 2021, but you have not done 17, 18, 18, 19. So you cannot say I don't know the law. You are already doing it in for subsequent years. So I would just say that there's a Hindi proverb, Der hai durust hai. So better is started from today. It would be foolish to keep repeating the mistakes just to avoid one mistake. So I would advise started from today itself, the cross charge, the valuation for cross charge, because the government is getting stricter day by day. Huh? We all know that. Now people ask whether for preceding years we can fight on the ground of revenue neutral. As I already told, it's not a single tax. Even though it's a one tax, one nation, GST is different, central GST, state GST. So revenue neutral, we can take a stand, but it is going to be difficult, very difficult to litigate. Now other doubts under ISD. Now in the pre-GST regime, there have been multiple disputes that ISD distributes the credit without checking the eligibility, and the recipient unit avails the whole of the credit. Now department has come to the recipient unit and has tried to recover or issue a show cause for recovery from the recipient unit. Now the recipient unit argues that I as a recipient don't know what all services has been received by ISD. So I cannot decide the eligibility and ineligibility. You will have to catch hold the ISD, which is you have to catch hold the ISD and recover from that. So now government is getting smarter with this old litigations. Now they have specifically inserted a provision of section 21, wherein they have said key wrong distribution by ISD and availment by recipient, we would catch hold of recipient. We would recover the amount from recipient unit. They have specifically got a provision, and therefore we cannot take this stand anymore. There have been favorable and unfavorable judgments with regard to this. So it will be recovered along with interest. Kindly note this. Huh? Now, second question is RCM under ISD. Now, ISD, we all know, if a common service, say a legal service or service received from an advocate, or in case of an import of service, a copyright, a patent for manufacture of a product, it's a common service for the company as a whole. All states are manufacturing goods. So how do we do that? There's no mechanism for paying under ISD. So I'll have to pay it under normal GST and thereafter raise an invoice from that GST to ISD GST, and thereafter ISD would further distribute it to all distinct persons. This is the provision, this is the methodology which everyone has to follow. So for example, for advocate, I have paid it in the Maharashtra GST, head office is also located in Maharashtra. So it has been prescribed that wherever ISD is located, you have to make the RCM payment in that state. So ISD is located in Maharashtra, so I am paying RCM, which is to be routed through ISD in Maharashtra GST. So that is done, and thereafter many people forget. They pay the RCM credit, they know it belongs to the company as a whole, but they forget that the second step, that distributing or raising invoice from Maharashtra GST into the ISD. There's a specific rule, Rule 54(1)(a), which has created a provision that in such cases it has to be paid in Maharashtra and thereafter an invoice. What will be the value? Same. Advocate has raised 1 lakh invoice. I have to again take the credit. I have to make the payment 18,000. Avail the credit of 18,000. Thereafter, I have to charge 1 lakh to ISD, levying 18,000 at the same value, 1 lakh, 1 lakh. No additional 10%, no cost plus 10, no other reasonable mean. It has been prescribed. So everyone forgets that. It has been observed during the audit what we have conducted in 17-18. It's my experience. So kindly take note of this in your industry, in your company, and start following this. Now people say कि can't we use cross charge instead of we are already doing cross charge. तो मैं ISD पे फिर से invoice raise ना करके directly cross charge कर दूं महाराष्ट्र से सब state पे. Is it allowed? The methodology has been prescribed. You cannot differ or deviate. Secondly, the basis for distribution for ISD is totally different, as already explained to you earlier, compared to cross charge. With this, we have finished our first topic, ISD and cross charge. I hope at least you all are getting a bit of it, not if not completely, at least a bit of it. With this, I would like to focus on another topic, annual return for 18-19. Now, first basic, I'll just run through this. I am short of time, friends. Brief update on limits. Recently, there's a notification issued 15, which has increased the audit limit for MSMEs from 2 crore to 5 crores. Virag bhai, is the screen in sharing mode?
Yeah, we have launched a call for 30 seconds. So we will close in within next 10 seconds.
Okay, I'll wait for 10 seconds, not an issue.
Yes, Mitesh bhai, please continue.
Okay, Virag bhai. Yeah. So I'm just giving a brief update on the limits. A person having turnover less than 2 crores not required to file GSTR 9, neither for GST audit. A person having turnover between 2 to 5 crores is required to file annual return. But as per the recent notification, no audit is required in such cases. They have given a relief for 18-19. A person having turnover more than 5 crores is required to file both annual return and audit. Now the due date has been extended for 18-19 to 30th June 2020. In my view, it is going to be further extended. Everyone knows that. So second and foremost thing, what is the base for GSTR 9 in annual return? What is the base we take? In 17-18, everyone was confused. We have to take 3B as the base, 1 as the base, or the books of accounts as the base. There were too many confusions. So now, since we have already gained the experience, can we decide what is the base? In my view, take 3B as the base. Take 3B as the base. Or rather, I would say take books as the base and decide whether it would be disclosed in table 4. Sorry, I'll just make you run through table 4 and table 10 before I start with this. That would help you to understand and be on the same page. Now, this is table 4 of GSTR 9, part 2. I have not covered the whole of the table. It's 4A and 4B, B2B, B2C. Then are further SEZ, export, and various other bifurcations. And thereafter, there's table 10 and 11. Now, table 4 covers those supplies which have been disclosed in 3B of 1819, and table 10 and 11 covers those supplies pertaining to 1819 or accounted in 1819 but have been disclosed in subsequent months 3B. Say, for example, in April 19 3B, those will be disclosed in table 10 and 11. So I was on what is the base to be taken. So I would say take books of accounts as the base. Always take books of accounts. And whether it will be disclosed in table 4 or table 10, that has to be decided based on whether you've disclosed in 3B of 1819 or 3B of 1920. I would again repeat once, books of accounts is the base for supply, outward supply sales. However, to decide whether it would be disclosed in table 4 of GSTR 9 or table 10 or 11 of GSTR 9, that would be based on GSTR 3B, because tax is paid through GSTR 3B. Therefore, we have taken 3B as base for bifurcating. But ultimately, the turnover, the summation of table 4 plus 10 minus 11 has to match with the books. Okay, friends, I'll go ahead. Now, there can be different scenarios. One is 3B ones and books are matching. Okay, best scenario. You can also proceed to file GSTR 9 based on the auto-populated data on the portal, because your 3B1 and books are all synchronizing. Second case is 3B is matching with books of accounts, but GSTR 1 is not matching. Now, in this case, you cannot take the help of the auto-populated data from GST portal, but it won't be a headache because the books and 3B are same. So the tax paid and the tax payable is same for the year. So it would be very easy. However, the customers would be taking follow-ups from you, or you would be taking follow-ups. What do you mean by that? So either they would be taking follow-up, if they have already made you the payment, they would take a follow-up that kindly upload the invoice in GSTR 1. And if they have not made the payment, they will hold the payment and you will have to take a follow-up. Kindly note. So third case is, I term it as ICU case. Neither books, neither 3B, neither 1 is matching with each other. All three are differing. 100, 110 and 120. Now first to decide which is the correct turnover. Obviously we'll take the audited financials, so that would be the base. But it may differ at times. So that is an ICU case. In such scenarios, you need to have a good consultant who does the in-depth analysis and checking of the books. Now fourth case, the most common case, friends, is your books is matching with 1, but 3B is not matching with books or 1. Now in such cases, there can be two possibilities. If I compare books with 3B, say for example, books, the turnover is 100, 3B can be either 90 or 110. That is excess paid or short paid in 3B. There can be only two possibilities. Either you have paid excess in 3B or through 3B of 1819, or you have paid less through 3B of 1819. I'll just take you the possibilities. Now, before starting the audit and annual return for 1819, kindly note, you'll have to go into 3 years. You'll have to open 3 years, 1718, 1819 and 1920. Why so? Because there can be cases that the supplies of 1718 have been paid through GSTR 3B of 1819, and similarly supplies of 1819 have been paid through GSTR 3B of 1920. So first and foremost, we already have the data ready because 1718's audit is already completed almost in all cases. There are few exceptions still doing the audit. So 1718, we already have the details of table 10 and 11. Table 10 and 11, basically if 3B has been considered in 1718, we can keep the data ready, table 10 and 11, because that would help us to go further. Similarly, we'll have to identify those transactions wherein we have disclosed the supplies in 3B of 1920. Now, both this data are to be kept open along with what has been disclosed in 3B of 1819, so that you can do a reconciliation or audit or preparing annual return. Okay, with this I'll go ahead. So I was there. There are two possibilities. If 3B is differing with books in case of turnover or in case of tax payment, either I have paid excess or short. So first possibility I'm taking, if it is excess paid, there can be three scenarios. I have excess paid, but I have adjusted in subsequent months return or subsequent years 3B. Say for example, 110 has been paid, so books turnover is 100. I realized it on subsequent verification and I corrected that position in subsequent 3B of 1920. Say for example, April 19 3B, I have reduced that. So for April 19, the turnover was 50, I have reduced 10 and shown net turnover of 40. So in such cases, there could be excess in 1819 3B, but the same has been adjusted. So 100 would go in table 4, 110 would go in table 4 in this case, and 10 would go in table 11. I will show you the example as well. Scenario 1, 110 would come in B2B in table 4 and 10 would be coming in table 11. This is minus 10, this is minus, this is to be reduced. So you can see there's a difference between tax payable in table 9 out here, 110, and tax paid through cash 100. So total turnover we can say is 100 and we have disclosed also 100, 110 minus 10. What will be auto-populated in 9C is sum of table 4, 10 and 11. So the total turnover as per annual return which will be auto-populating in GSTN 9C, that is reconciliation statement, would be 100 in this case. So it would be matching. Basically the books would be matching. 9 and 9C would tally. Second scenario, where I have short paid in 17-18, but I have paid through GSTR 3B of 18-19. Now there can be a case that my current turnover is 100, but I have paid 110, but this 10 rupees pertains to actually 17-18, which has been accounted in 17-18, but has been disclosed or paid through 3B of 18-19. Now in such cases, what is to be disclosed or how GST 9 will be looking? It's like 100 in table 4, because there is no separate table for this 10 rupees. This is an issue. Kindly note, we'll show 100 in table 4 because that is the turnover of 18-19. But there would be a difference between tax payable and tax paid in table 9 of GSTR 9. Now that would remain. We cannot do anything. Now for this, what we can do is, now 9C would tell it, because what will be auto-populated in 9C is this tax payable. Ultimately sum of table 4 plus 10 minus 11, which would be 100, and the turnover of 18-19 is as per books is also 100, so that would match. But we can put an observation in 9C for the difference between table 9 of GSTR 9 with regard to tax payable and tax paid. Tax payable is 100 in the given case and tax paid is 110. Similarly, there can be a scenario where tax is actually been paid in excess. So in that cases, we'll have to go for refund. So we'll have to disclose 100, the actual turnover, tax payable 100, tax paid is 110. After filing audit report, we can file RFD 1 and claim refund. Now, second possibility, friends, I will run through this. This is a similar circumstances. I am yet to cover interest. So I'll just run through this quickly. Now, possibility 2, short tax paid as per 3B of 18-19. Now, three scenarios I already told you. Balance tax paid in 1920 3B. So 90 is paid in 18-19 3B. 10 rupees is paid in 1920 3B. The total of table 4, which is 90, and 10 in table 10 would add sum up to 100, and 9C would tally. Similarly, second scenario is excess tax paid in 17-18. So suppose in 17-18, instead of 100 rupees, 110 was paid in 3B. Now on audit, we realized and we adjusted it in 18-19's 3B. So 18-19's actual turnover is 100, but we paid only 90, reducing that 10 rupees of 17-18, which was excess paid. We can do so as per the circular. There's already a circular. We can adjust the liability in subsequent months 3B. So you have done that, and therefore your tax paid is 90, though your turnover is 100. Similar, there can be scenario that tax is actually paid short till date. Few invoices were not considered while preparing 3B workings or filing 3Bs for the month. So in such cases, you will have to show the actual sales in table 4, which is 100. Suppose tax paid is 90. So tax payable and tax paid in table 9. So in this scenario, you can see this table 400, tax payable 100, tax paid is 90. So the balance 10 has to be paid or discharged through DRC 03 after filing annual return. And you can put an observation with regard to this, that the same has already been discharged through DRC 03 dated so and so, on the safer side. Okay, with this, this is a combination of adjustments. Now, as I said, you will have to open 3 years books, 17, 18, 18, 19, 19, 20. So there can be a case that turnover as per books is 100, turnover as per 3B is 100. You think that everything is right. The team, GST team has done an excellent job. There's no mistake. But there can be cases, which I will be explaining through this example, the answer will be 100 only. But there can be a case where the supply of 17, 18 has been disclosed in 18, 19, 3B. So we'll take turnover as per 3B as 100 as the base starting point. Thereafter, we'll reduce the supply of 17, 18 to derive at the turnover of 18, 19 to get the true picture. We'll reduce that turnover which pertains to actual 17, 18, which has been accounted in 17, 18. Subsequently, there's a the tax of 18, 19 has been discharged through 3B of 19, 20. We'll add that. So 100 minus 20 plus 20 would give me 100. So there can be, don't consider that if the 3B and books are matching, that everything is perfect, there's no adjustment. There can be a case of adjustments. This is going to happen in few cases. So kindly take note of this, all the auditors especially. Now with this, inward supplies. Now in sales, we have considered books as the base. Now in inward supplies, I would advise to take 3B as the base. The ITC availed through 3B. Now, whatever ITC has been availed in 1819 3B, it can consist of 4 parts. First is invoices dated 1718, accounted in books in 1718. The purchase or the inward credit has been accounted in 1718, but you have claimed it in 3B of 1819. So accounted in 1718 and claimed in 3B of 1819. Second case is invoice dated 1718, but the same was accounted also in 1819 and claimed also in 1819. Invoices, especially for March 18, would have been received in subsequent months, say April 18 or May 18. So the accounting as well as the availment of that credit would be done in 1819 3B. Therefore, there can be scenarios. So I am bifurcating this. I would explain you why. So invoices dated 1718, it can be accounted in 1718 but claimed in 3B of 1819. Similarly, accounted in 1819 but claimed in 3B of 1819. And then there are invoices of 1819 which are claimed also in 1819. The fourth can be ITC reclaim. If I have already reversed the credit for non-payment within 180 days under Rule 37 or any other reason, and I have reclaimed the same, so even that would be forming part of 3B. So all these 4 scenarios which I could think of would consist of the total ITC claimed in 3B. So why have I done this? I would explain you now. This is table 6. How to disclose this I will explain you. Table 6. In 1819, first of all, major relief has been given. All major fields are optional. We don't have to bifurcate between input, service, capital good. Everything can be entered in inputs. Similarly, for reversals, we can opt for other reversals and mention the amount. So there is major relief given. So it's as good as based on the 1718, a relief has been given for 1819 also. So it's quite simple from that aspect, GST 9 and 9C. So this is table 6, ITC availed during the financial year. Thereafter, I am taking table 8. Table 7 is for reversal of credit. I am not covering that aspect. Table 8, 2A reconciliation. Now everyone already had a headache listening this because they had enough of their time wasted into this exercise for 1718. So why again 1819? Yes, you have to do. Now I'll explain it. The reason for showing these two tables. Now, as already explained to you earlier, 1819's credit 3B ITC availed in 3B of 1819 would be consisting of four different things. I am taking one example or two example due to paucity of time. Now ITC on invoices of 1718 accounted in 1718. Kindly note, accounted in 1718 and 1819. So I have in the given example 100 pertains to invoices dated 1819 and 10 rupees pertains to invoice dated 1718, which has also been accounted in the books in 1718, which have already been closed, finalized. So 10 rupees pertains to 1718, 100 rupees pertains to this. Now there is an issue out there. There are two options in my view. You can opt whichever is convenient for you. There is no clarity yet. So one case is option 1 I have given. You can auto-populated figure is 110 as claimed in 3B. You can see in table 6A. Thereafter in 6B, I have taken 100. Now, Mitesh, you said take 3B as base, but you are taking 100 in this. Why is it so? Now, the balance 10 I have taken, but I have considered that in table 6M, any other ITC avail. Now, why so? Why so? Because in two-way reconciliation in table 8, 8A, which is going to be auto-populated would be of the invoices uploaded by vendors or suppliers of 1819. The auto-population would be with regard to 1819 invoices. So if I show 110, which I have shown in option 2, 110 out here in 6B, now this 6B figure is auto-populated in 8B. So my two-way auto-populated figure would be 100, but I have availed excess credit 110, which would create a panic situation and which would invite department attention. So what I have done, I would advise to go for option 1. You can show 100 in 6B. Yes, now there would be difference in 6J of minus 10. However, I am adding it subsequently in any other ITC. So total ITC is 110, which is intact as shown in 3B. Okay, and this would be auto-populated in 9C and it would match. Similar is option 2, which is same invoices accounted in invoices of 1718 accounted in 1890. I am not taking the same example again. Now I would be going on another topic. There are no much difficulties in annual return of 1819, to be honest. It is much simplified version. Already government has given much relief by making many fields optional. So I'm not taking too much time on that. I'm jumping on to my next topic, which is interest payable under GST. Now I have divided this into 4 parts. There are 4 scenarios which I would be delegating my time on. First is interest on reversal of IT which has been availed but not utilized. First would be interest availed but not utilized and which has been reversed subsequently. Second is interest on gross liability or net liability. Now everyone is aware of that gross liability, net liability. Everyone has received notice almost for delaying even for 1 day. They have received a notice of huge amount claiming interest. Third is interest on reversal of ITC which has been utilized, availed and utilized, but it was wrongly availed. Subsequently, you have reversed it, but you after utilizing it, you have reversed it. So this is a separate scenario. So the first what I have said is you have availed, but you have, before utilizing it. In this scenario, you have availed it, utilized it, and thereafter on subsequent verification, you have realized that you have wrongly availed the credit and you have subsequently reversed it after utilizing. So what would be the interest rate in that case? Fourth is interest on delay in filing of GSTR 3B for Feb to May. Now, COVID relief has been given in GST in this current scenario, global scenario, that you can file 3B by 24th of June having turnover more than 5 crores. I would come on to that topic. There's quite confusion with regard to that aspect, with regard to the interest aspect in that. So first is interest on reversal of ITC which has been availed but not utilized. So we can say that accounting error has been made. 1 lakh has been wrongly claimed as 10 lakh in 3B. It is possible. Anyone can do that mistake, and many have done that mistake. Second is section 75 credit. I have availed it. Ineligible ITC, block credit, we said. Purchase of motor car, canteen services, personal services, construction services, all those are block credit. I have wrongly availed that credit, but I have reversed it before utilizing it. In the first case also, I have reversed the 9 lakh before utilizing it. Now I'll give you one example. Now department has been issuing notices for recovery of interest in such cases. Kindly note, this is already going issue. Now, can department use FIFO basis? Now, what do you mean FIFO basis? First in, first out, everyone has heard of that. So, can department say that? I'll explain you this with an example. That would be easy. Now, in the first month, you have availed the credit of 100, which is ineligible. Say 75 credit, or you have wrongly taken that credit, but there was no liability in first month. Now, second month, there was liability of 150, but you also had credit of 200 for that month. So the total credit comes to 300. Total liability is 150. So you have paid off that 150 through ITC, through credit of 300. The balance 150 would remain. So now can department use FIFO basis and say that you have availed 100 rupees wrongly in first month and you have utilized that against this 150? There is no method prescribed. I am not saying that department cannot say that. Department can very well say that, but it's not correct. We can definitely litigate it. If your balance is more than 100, you have availed the credit wrongly 100. Say in the second month 150 is paid and the 100 which you have wrongly availed is also reversed. So department cannot claim interest in such cases. Now why so? Why am I saying so? Now I'll take you through the provisions for this aspect. Now section 50 of CGST Act covers the interest. Now read the provision. I'm just reading the first line. Every person who is liable to pay tax, liable to pay tax as in outward supply pay and liable to pay tax. In that case, 50 subsection 1 provides that if there's any short payment of tax or non-payment of tax or delay in payment of tax, say in April I have not paid and I have subsequently paid for April months in May 3B, then I have to pay interest through this section 50 subsection 1. It doesn't provide for interest with regard to ITC availed and which has been reversed. It is with regard to the outward liability which is liable to be paid. So 50 subsection 1 does not cover this. In fact, there's no section, I would say. I would come on 50 subsection 3 in the later part. I would explain you why it is not covered in 50 subsection 3 as well. So the 50 subsection 2 is with regard to the rate of the number of days interest is to be paid. That now the most important thing in this topic, what I'm saying is ITC availed, wrongly availed, but reversed before utilization. Kindly note this. I'm again and again emphasizing on this because people might not misunderstood me. Nitesh has said that if you avail and reverse it before utilization, there's no ITC. Your accumulated ITC balance should always be higher than the ineligible ITC availed over the period. So say for April you availed wrong rate of 100, so you are reversing it in September, you realized it. So April to September, your credit balance should always be higher than 100 rupees. Only then can you say that you have not utilized that. Okay friends, with this I will be moving on to the next topic. Interest on gross liability or net liability. This is a topic which is well known to everyone. I would not take much time on this. In the 31st GST, I will just I have noted few events and few dates, the sequence in which the issue has been raised. Now, there's no provision for interest on gross liability or net liability. So, department has been issuing notices demanding GST on gross liability. Now, what is gross liability? Suppose in 1 month my liability is 1000 and my credit is 600. So, what I do is I pay 1000 rupees of my tax liability through ITC 600 and the balance in cash 400. So now we as CA fraternity, all everyone in the industry is of the view, and it has been previously held in VAT regime as well, that the liability out here means the net liability. Net liability. So 100 minus 600 ITC, because what is ITC? ITC is nothing but an advance tax paid to the government. It is already there with the government. Just because it is lying in the credit ledger, can we take out any money from the credit ledger without claiming refund from department or without their approval? We cannot. So one can always say that the credit ledger here, it is not with the government, but then I don't have the power. I cannot withdraw as and when I want. And why is it so? If it is not with the government, let me allow me. You know, why to create a lock, and why to ask the registered dealer to claim refund from the department or get it sanctioned from the department before getting the refund? So in my view, once it is credit ledger, it is already there with department. Do not utilize, but it is as good as I have parked my money into an account which is not within my control. So it's already moved from my account to government portal's account. I can say that. So in the 31st GST Council meeting held on 22nd December, GST Council had recommended that interest would be charged on net liability, not on gross, and they would come with the amendment in CGST Act. Thereafter, they came with the amendment in CGST Act, Amendment Act 2018. But before that, already before the effective date of Amendment Act 2018 was 1st February 2019. But not all provisions of Amendment Act 2018 were incorporated. The proviso which was inserted that interest will be leviable on net cash liability, it is not yet notified, friends. It is not yet. It is already there in CGST Amendment Act 2019, but the same is not effective because the same has not been notified. There's a case law called Mega Engineering, which is against in saying that interest is to be paid on gross liability, which was delivered on 18th April. Thereafter, amendment in GST Act had come, which was notified on 1/8/2019, but it was effective on a later date, which was notified by the GST department on the government. Thereafter, there's a case law called Reflex Industries, which was delivered on 6th Jan, which is a favorable case law for us. High Court had said that you can pay interest on net cash liability. I won't go into the detail of the judgment because due to paucity of time. Thereafter, the 39 GST Council meeting, again they had clarified that we'll be getting the notification and it would be retrospectively. But till date, the same has not been notified, friends. So the issue is still open. Government GST Council has already recommended, but there's no legal paper which we can take backup of to claim that interest is payable on net liability. Department can still demand on gross. With this, I will go on another topic, interest on reversal of ITC, which has been utilized. Now 50 subsection 3, it says that the taxable person who has made undue or excess claim of ITC under rule 4210, what is 4210 and what is 4310? Now there's a mismatch concept or matching mismatching which the government initially planned. Section 37, 38, 39 GSTR 1, 2, 3. I hope everyone is aware GSTR 1, 2 matching concept, but that has never been incorporated. So the provision was not fully incorporated. So 4210 is what, when I upload in GSTR 1, it will be reflected in 2A, in your 2A, or it is you have availed the credit without the same being uploaded by me. Thereafter, department will issue notices to both the supplier and the recipient. Supplier will say, okay, I'll upload it. And if he has not uploaded within that month of the communication, the same will be added to the liability of the recipient, and the recipient has to pay interest. Now, this is 42 subsection 10. So this is only when there's matching mismatching concept. Similar is for 4310. So this has now been incorporated. So there's no specific provision for interest that can be demanded from an assessee on reversal of ITC, which has been wrongly availed but not utilized. Now, if there's no provision, people can say कि avail करके utilize कर दिया and then subsequently reverse. Still there's no. Okay, but when you utilize, you are reducing your normal output tax liability. You are reducing your output tax liability, and the department can claim interest for in reduction in payment of output tax under section 50 subsection 1, as already explained to you earlier. Okay, so now second question comes ki, if this is not effective, this is not there, but whether interest would be at 18% or 24%. 50 subsection 3 provides interest would be leviable at 24%. So people have a misconception that whenever they have claimed ITC and at the time of audit they are reversing the ITC, they are paying interest at 24%. I would advise that you can pay interest at 18%. 24% is not there, because what this 50 subsection 3 is not effective. It is only in case of, rather I would say it's a wrong word, it's effective, but it is only in case of rule 4210 reversal, section 4210 reversal and section 4310 reversal, subsection 10 reversal. What we do is normal, there's no matching mismatching. So there's no interest yet demanded under 4210 and 4310, or they cannot be demanded because the concept is deferred as of now. So interest at 24% is not to be paid on reversal of ITC, even if it is utilized. So even if you utilize it, thereafter you pay it, you have to pay interest that would be at 18%. Okay. Now interest payable under new GST returns. Now since GST returns have been deferred, I would like to skip that topic as of now. But there is a provision of matching concept in that, as everyone knows that it would be a single return, and everyone would be eligible to avail the credit only if the vendor supplier uploads the invoices. There's an exception that credit can be availed by the recipient unit, but the same has to be uploaded by the supplier within 2 months. And if it does not so, the credit availed by the recipient has to be reversed. Now they can use that provision. It is similar to 42 subsection 10, what I have explained. So similarly, they can get this provision and ask for interest at 24%. As of now, there's no provision. As of now, it's deferred, so we would not devolve on that. Second is interest on delay in filing of GST at 3B for Feb 2 May. Now people are confused. The due date has not been extended. Kindly note, the due date has not been extended. The government has given a relief of paying interest at 9% from 16th day from the due date. So the due date for March is 20th April. Add 15 days to that. So we'll say 5th May is the 15th day. So if you don't file the return of April by 5th May, if you file subsequently, interest would be leviable at reduced rate 9%. But that is only in case you file the return on or before 24th June 2020. So what if it is filed after 24th June? Will I get the benefit of reduced rate of interest or waiver of late fee? No, you won't be getting any benefit. Interest would be leviable from first day of the subsequent to the due date. So in case of April, in case of March, 20th April is the due date. From 21st of April, you are supposed to pay interest till the date of filing return or till the date of payment of tax, and that too at 18%, not 9%. Kindly note, to take the advantage of 9%, you have to file the return on or before 24th June 2020. Now, one major issue which everyone is facing is that cancellation of registration by department. Now, department has been giving notices quite frequently to every person. I don't know, due to some technical issues or it is auto-generated, but in many cases they are wrong. They are asking the ISD, they are asking a dealer, ISD dealer, issuing the notice on ISD that you have not filed the GST at 3B for 6 months, therefore we are cancelling. There have been cases. I've seen such notices. So that is, I feel, a technical snag from the department's angle, and they have been issuing the notice for cancellation of registration. They have the power to suo motu cancel from any retrospective date. The power is that they can cancel from any retrospective date. I have come across one case where, as of now, in April 2020, they have cancelled the GST registration effective from 1st July 2017. The dealer has already filed GST at 3B till March 2020. He has received a notice for cancellation and cancellation order has already been passed. effective from 1st July. Now, what has happened in such cases is the customer of such dealer whose GST has been cancelled has also received notices because they have availed ITC from a dealer who was not registered. So even they have received notices. You can see the small mistake, technical snag, or without giving an opportunity to the dealer to justify himself, they are cancelling the registrations, and which is creating a panic or havoc situation among all the customers of that dealer. No one is ready to deal with him. Everyone is considering him as a fraud. So kindly take note, this is a serious issue. Whenever your client receives a notice for cancellation, don't take it as a normal notice or a simple notice, we'll deal it later. It's a priority notice, priority flag. There are multiple reasons on the basis of which they can issue you a notice for cancellation if you're not conducting business from declared place or issuing invoice without supply of goods. Similarly, I'm not going through each one of them. Now, what is it that there after cancellation, you have the power to apply for revocation within 30 days from the date of receipt of the cancellation order. So you can apply within 30 days from the date of receipt of notice. And the problem is the dealers, small MSMEs, don't know when they receive the notices. They receive the mail, but they don't access the mailbox. They don't check the messages, and therefore, many cases the revocation timeline has already lapsed. And for such scenarios, at no cost, they are genuine dealers filing returns regularly, but they could not respond, and therefore, because they couldn't understand that they have received the notice and they're supposed to reply within the specified time, so the GSTs have been cancelled. So government has given a one-time facility. The GST Council rather has recommended through 39 GST Council meeting dated 14th March 2020 that any GST which has been cancelled prior to this date on or before 14th March 2020 can apply for revocation till 30th June. The application for revocation, the time has been already elapsed, still they can apply. This is a one-time relief. It has not yet been notified, but it has already been recommended by GST Council. So we are expecting a notification in this regard very soon. And there have been cases that appeal have already been filed against such revocation applications rejected or where timeline is already gone. So that appeal would have to be withdrawn if this relief is provided by the government. So second is notices for section 36(4). 36(4), as everyone knows, is the new section wherein you can avail 110% or 20%. For few months it was 120%, and now it is 110% of eligible ITC as reflecting in GSTR 2A. As reflecting in 2A, the eligible credit. A circular has been issued clarifying how to calculate how to do the working for claiming 110%. The circular number is referred here 123, dated 11th November. Now the circular says instead of supplier wise, you can go consolidated wise. So if there are 100 suppliers who have raised invoices on us, so I'd be getting 100 invoices in my 2A. So there would be out of 100, 80 might have uploaded. So I need not go supplier wise. If one supplier has issued me 10 invoices, but he has uploaded only 8 invoices, and therefore I can take 8 invoices ka total, say for example 80,000, and plus 10%. We are not supposed to go as per that. We are supposed to take total. So total purchases for April or total credit for April as per books is 1 lakh. Total credit as per 2A is 70,000. We can take 70 plus 10%, 77,000 in the month of April 3B. The balance credit can be claimed subsequently. Now the problem is, what if circular quite clearly mentions that you have to download the 2A or you have to consider the 2A as on the due date of GSTR 1, which is 11th of the next month generally. So, but they have not gone into the facts whether the portal is in a position to provide GSTR 2 as on that date. Not everyone is going to sit at the 12 a.m. and wait on the 12th of early midnight morning and download the 2A. It is not practically possible. So have they made a provision wherein we can subsequently download the GSTR 2 as on 11th? Not. So practically that is not possible. So everyone is taking 2A as and when they are downloading between 11th and 18th or 19th, and considering that as base, which is practically correct, I would say, but yes, lawfully it is incorrect. So that is the another issue you can say. I would advise you can go for cumulative recoup. What is cumulative recoup? Now for April, suppose 100 rupees was the credit, but in 2A only 70 is reflecting. So you have taken 70 or say 77. So balance 23 has not been availed by you. Now there can be a case that after you have filed April's 3B, the supplier has filed GSTR 1. So now when the supplier files GSTR 1, it would be auto-populating in 2A of April. April, kindly note. So when you file May's return, you will have to check GSTR 2A of May as well as GSTR 2A of April. You have to check what you have already considered in April 3B, and the balance, any additional invoices, you have to add that and consider that, and thereafter apply the 110% formula, you can say that. So cumulatively, so for April 2A has to be considered. For May, you will have to consider April and May 2A. For when you are filing the return in June of June or in July for June, you can consider you can freshly download the 2A for April to June and compare it with already taken already downloaded 2A as on in the month of April and May, and thereafter the differences or the additional invoices though uploaded by the supplier in April or May subsequently, that can be taken care in June month, and ITC can be availed. In my view, this is my view. Now a relief has already been given with regard to this in April 19 to April 20 to September 20, that you can go for cumulatively. You need not verify 2A for April, and you can proceed to take credit as per your books, and thereafter in the month of September 20 you will have to do this exercise, and the aggregate should match with the 2A or 100. The credit should not be more than 110% of the credit reflecting in 2A for April to September. This is a major relief. Now misunderstanding 3, it's a very small issue, but still I have taken it. The thing is, the registration limit has been increased to 40 lakhs. Many people know that, but they don't know that it has been exclusively increased for those persons who are exclusively supplying goods. So for a registered dealer or a dealer who is providing service, the registration limit is still 20 lakhs. Kindly note this. Many people are making this mistake. Many small businessmen are not being advised correctly due to this. In this 40 lakh, you are not supposed to consider the turnover of interest on loan or advances. It has been specifically excluded. Now, latest update, with this I will be concluding. Latest update is GST PMT 09. Now, what is GST PMT 09? It is a form through which you can transfer the balance from one major head reflecting in cash ledger to another major head or minor head, or vice versa from one minor head to another major head or minor head. So what are the major heads and minor heads? This has been long awaited, this form, because there are many cases where dealers have wrongly paid tax. When you wrongly paid tax, instead of CGST you deposited in IGST, it is reflecting in cash ledger. You cannot utilize that against the CGST liability. That has to be compulsorily utilized against the IGST liability. So this, with this PMT 09, those people will be getting a relief who has done a mistake and can transfer that balance from IGST to CGST. I have actually tried this in one of my clients' case today. I have actually transferred the balance lying in late fee, which was returned back or waived by the department. I have transferred that to normal tax in CGST and SGST. So it is working. So you can do that. With this, I would conclude. Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for patient listening. I hope everyone has understood at least a bit. I have tried my best to simplify the cross-charge ISD mechanism. I hope. Thank you. Thank you, Virabhai. You can take over.
Thank you so much, Nitesh bhai. Wonderful session, and we got wonderful feedback also from all the participants. Thank you for your time and for your a wonderful presentation explanation and very colorful presentation. What I would like to say.
Thank you.
So
Thank
we
you.
have done a final poll and we are getting wonderful feedback in that also.
Yeah, that's great. That's great to hear. Thank you
So
to you,
any
especially for
question
giving
is
a
left
platform.
out, people can join our WhatsApp group and we can solve out there also. Mitesh bhai will be there to answer all your questions. So kindly join the WhatsApp group of the webinar. Link already provided you all in the mail.
You can join the WhatsApp group and ask me the queries. I would be resolving it, and I will be giving my opinion or my views on that queries.
Okay, thank you Mitesh bhai. We are ending webinar now right here.
Thank you, Virag bhai. Thank you all the participants. Thank you. Thank you very much.